Tuesdays at WagerTalk.com and SportsMemo.com, where you can get the hottest handicappers' best bet or daily package for only $2.
Happy Tuesday, guys. Welcome to WagerTalk TV. I'm Carmine Bianco. This is Stoppage Time. This is the World Cup preview, the best tournament on earth, bar none in any sport. Starts on Sunday in Qatar as Qatar and Ecuador play the opening round match on Sunday. We're going to do a quick preview. We're going to go through, it's a round table. We're going to talk about some of the groups. We're going to talk about some favorites, some dark horses. Each capper will recap at the end of the show who they like as their favorites and as their dark horses in this tournament. Let's bring them in. From WagerTalk.com, it's Nick Borrman and Kevin Dolan. And of course, from Sports Memo, my favorite prop guy, Pavlos, Laguretos. Boys, we're starting a little late today, and I don't want to rush you, so I'm going to give you a quick hello to the three of you guys, and then I am going to jump right into this because I know you guys are itching to go. Kev is like me. We were going to sport our team colors, but unfortunately, Italy still hasn't figured out how to qualify, and Ireland, they're right there with them. Man, maybe we just play a bunch of friendlies between the two of them. Nick's USA is in there, so he's good. He's happy. He's got his Pulisic jersey, and he's raring to go. Pavlos, I don't know who you're cheering for this time around, but I will get to you in a minute. So, guys, I'm not going to give any opinions. I will show at the end because I've already done a preview video, but we will talk about some of the groups, some that are perceived as the groups of death here. And then just look at maybe some favorites, some long shots in this tournament. Whoever you like, you can mention them throughout, and then we'll recap it at the end with some images up on the screen. One of the things, let's just start right from the get-go, guys. You know, when you're looking at this tournament, there's 32 teams in there. You can kind of look at the FIFA rankings to try and figure out who the better teams are, but it's not always a team ranked second or third playing a team ranked 54th, and you figure that team has to win. Do you look at the FIFA rankings at all, Nick, when you look at a tournament like this? Does it factor into yours? Or because I assume you already know who the better team is in the FIFA rankings, so the numbers shouldn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, for myself, no. But I would, it's a good place to start for somebody that doesn't know international soccer that well. Obviously, the four of us are going to know it well enough to know quickly on paper who's going to be the better side. Of course, when they're two very close teams, it doesn't really matter what the ranking is or anything like that anyway. But most of us here, we know the European and we know the South American teams. I'll be the first to admit I don't know really a lot about the Asian teams, right? I don't follow that. I don't think many of us do. They don't have, it's not like their players are littered all over the European leagues or even South American leagues for that matter. So those are the teams that are a little tougher for me. I'm sure you guys would agree with that. And, take Qatar, for example. Every single player on Qatar's team is from a club in Qatar, and I don't know any single one of them. So, all we really have to work with is some past results, which, in their case is basically a year of a ton of friendlies, which they've done well with, but those are hard to gauge. And last fall they played several World Cup contenders. So that's something to look at. They were beaten easily by Portugal twice, Serbia twice, and even Kevin's motherland of Ireland. So, and if you look at some of the lineups, when you're looking at past international games, I would just advise, because like I said, the rankings are one thing, but if you actually look at some past results, look at lineups in those games too, if they are available, because that's going to tell you a lot of these international teams, especially during friendlies, will rotate players in and out. Maybe they'll only play one half, whatever. But to answer the question, Carm, no, not a lot of FIFA rankings for me. I know the European and I know the South American teams, and let's be honest, this World Cup is likely to be dominated by those two teams, those two continents.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And Kev, I'll pose this question to you. And Nick makes a good point of it. You look at the World Cup in general. There's been 21 World Cups. they've been won by 8 nations. Brazil with 5, Germany with 4, Italy with 4, Argentina, Uruguay, and France with 2 apiece, and then England and Spain with 1 each. It's hard to imagine only 8 countries have ever won the World Cup, but here we are. And you'll find those teams pretty much in the top 15 of the rankings, pretty much all of those teams, and yet only one of them is not participating in this year's World Cup. I won't mention who they are, Kev.
Yeah, look, I'm the same as Nick. I don't factor in FIFA rankings at all. When I'm looking at tournament futures and so on, what I'm mainly looking for, obviously, when evaluating who I expect to go deep, or perspective paths, which we'll, talk about a bit later in my tournament favourites. We saw in last summer's Euros, for example, when we talk about FIFA rankings, France, Germany and Portugal were all paired together in the same group. And while France were higher rated than the Netherlands, for example, just taking another team heading into that tournament, the Netherlands, you would make a play on them easier because they had an easier path of resistance through the knockout rounds. So, that's the type of things I'm looking for instead of, who's higher on the FIFA rankings overall. Look at the strength of schedule and so on, like that, potential matchups down the road, round of 16. So, yeah, I'm the same as Nick. I rarely, to be honest, look at FIFA rankings when I'm making futures plays in these kind of tournaments.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think mapping out, and there's some sites where you can set up the brackets pretty much by picking who you think will finish first to fourth in each of the groups, and then it will populate that into a bracket. You can figure out which teams, if you're correct with your groups, are going to move on into the knockout stages and the path that they have to get to the World Cup, which should help you with your future bets. And I did a show with Kelly Stewart that's also on WagerTalk TV, and you can catch that one there. Pavlos, Kevin, and Nick make some great points, not only about looking at teams. A lot of these teams have not played much this year other than the tail end of the World Cup qualifying. Some had already qualified and used secondary players off the bench. Some of the Nations League stuff weren't their actual full lineups. So do you look at the rankings at all, or is it a combination of what Nick and Kev are putting forth here?
I do not look at the rankings because I think that the rankings can be quite misleading. And I'll give you 3 examples really quick. Belgium have been ranked 1 and they're now ranked 2 for many, many years. And they've, I think the best one was a 3rd place. They never really do well in these competitions. Then I'm going to go to the other end of the leaderboards, where Ghana, out of the teams that have already qualified to the World Cup, Ghana, they sit at the lowest spot, 61st. Now, there's more teams above them who are actually worse than Ghana. Saudi Arabia, Qatar. There's a lot of teams, Tunisia, who are much worse than Ghana. And I think that Ghana are surely going to exceed expectations based on their FIFA rankings. And my last example is Ecuador. Ecuador are right now sitting at the, let me see here, 44th spot of the FIFA rankings. However, Ecuador are a very interesting case because they're very, very useful and very effective at home, but on the road, they struggle a lot. So if you had FIFA rankings at home, I believe Ecuador would be close to number 30, and on the road, close to number, I don't know, maybe 70. So this could be misleading, and I do not take them into consideration.
Okay, there you have it, boys. I like the answers I got for you guys because I think it's very important. The World Cup is one of the toughest tournaments to handicap because unlike any other tournament that goes into the knockout stages and becomes a bracket type event, you look at other sports. The NFL are playing literally every week leading up to the playoffs. NCAA basketball, March Madness, they're playing conference tournaments leading up to that. So, these are a bunch of players playing in domestic leagues that now have a week to week and a half with their countries to get together, practice, and get ready for this tournament. It is extremely tough, and we've seen some surprises as we did in 2018, of course. So now, guys, let's look at some of these groups. You don't have to pick a group, a specific group. But there is no group of death this year. If you look at the so-called groups of death, you can probably make a case for Group C, Argentina, Mexico, and Poland in that group, along with Saudi Arabia. You can probably make a case for Group G, where Brazil, Serbia, and Switzerland, two very three very good teams are. And I wouldn't really consider Group F with Belgium, Croatia, and Canada and Morocco a group of death. But Kev, I'm going to go to you. Is there a group of death? And who do you feel has possibly the biggest chance of upsetting and making it into, not so much winning the group, but maybe just making it into the knockout stages?
Well, I mean, as we said, Carmine, France, Portugal, Germany, that's a group of death. So there's nothing to rival that this time around from last year's Euros to this World Cup. But I do think, there's a couple of groups, believe we could see some upsets in. I've already made a couple of futures bets on this. In terms of Group B, for instance, I already put up a little prop bet on England crashing out in the group stage at 8-1. I like that as a little side play. It's not because I'm Irish and I'm supporting against them, obviously. I do think the whole Gareth Southgate thing, I'm just not comfortable with England. And if there's one of the big, teams to crash out early, it could be them. USA and Wales 1 and 2, 33-1. I quite like that price in that one. So that's an angle there. I also think Japan can cause problems in Group E as well. There's actually a lot of Bundesliga talent on that Japanese side. And despite the two big teams in that group, I think they could potentially take points off someone like Spain in that group as well. And, you mentioned another group quickly, Canada also. I think Croatia are reaching the end of the road in terms of big tournaments. And at 7-1, Belgium, Canada 1-2 in that group. That also looks like a big price. So, there's, while there's no group of death overall, there's definitely a few groups I could see surprises taking place in.
Wow, my head just blew when I heard blew up when I heard that England one. That is fascinating, but I get it. Again, they did rotate quite a few players in the Nations League, but they looked terrible in Nations League in getting relegated from the Group A's down to the Group B's. So we'll see. Nick, same question to you here.
One more group I'll preview on top of Kevin's. First of all, I have to say that Kevin's background, his hotel room, it looks like he's going to finish the show and immediately turn into a 70s porn film. So good luck there, Kevin. I digress, of course. Sorry, Kevin. The group I'm looking at that might be a little bit of tricky is Portugal, South Korea, and Uruguay. And that's just really because I think Uruguay is kind of like what Kevin said of Croatia, is ending near the ending of their reign as well. They got a bunch of old heads, right? I mean, you got Luis Suarez in there, Edinson Cavani, Diego Godin. This is probably Cup. I imagine they're going to be given a good amount of minutes on their team, which I think is actually not the best situation for this team. They got a lot of other players that can step up and play. So I think they're going to, have a tough time. And South Korea is a team I think that has a decent possibility of coming out of the group over them. And they're like plus 220 or something to come out of the group. So I think it's a pretty good chance. We know about Son, of course, from Tottenham, and he is playing, even though he, fractured his eye socket about a month ago, but it sounds like he is ready to go. Might be a little, out of game speed or whatever, but they've proven they can do it before. They beat Germany in the last World Cup and knocked the Bavarian club right out of that group stage. So it's not like they're, this is a unique situation for them. And everything they've done, this summer and fall has been friendlies, but they did play some good teams against Egypt, Paraguay, Chile. Of course, they were beaten pretty soundly by Brazil there too. So, but South Korea, I think, is a team that people probably don't know a lot about and probably won't pay a lot of attention to, and they'll just immediately think Uruguay is a whatever to get into the knockouts. But I think that's a great group to look at to possibly see somebody else getting in there besides Uruguay.
Yeah, Nick, listen, I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think that one of the landmines people or bettors as a whole need to avoid, and Pavlos, I'm going to throw this one to you next, is just assuming that the countries in some of these groups that aren't one of the favorites are going to get run over. And a great example is Group B. You've got Iran in there with England, USA, and Wales, and everyone thinks Iran's going to get run over. Let's not forget, in 2018, Iran was in a group with Portugal, Spain, and Morocco, and the scores of those ones, they held Portugal to a 1-1 draw. They lost 1-0 late to Spain, and they beat Morocco a 1-0. So those are the ones you have to watch out for. A similar group in this one is like Group C with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a team that plays so well defensively and just doesn't score. But against the competition they play against, they've only allowed more than 2 goals on one occasion, I think, over the last year or so. And that was in a playoff game. And they're a 2-goal underdog, Pavlos, in their first game to Argentina. But give me your thoughts on possible upsetters.
I just want to quickly touch on Iran. They're going to be better than what most people think. They have a lot of talent in there. They got Porto's Taremi, they got Leverkusen's Azmoun. They have a couple of players with EPL experience, so I don't expect them to be the punching bags of the group. However, this is not one of the groups that I perceive as the groups of death. The groups that I perceive the groups of death as the groups of death are groups E, F, G, and H. All those 4 groups, for me, spell danger. Spain, Germany, Costa Rica, and Japan. Costa Rica play very, very defensively, and so will Japan. So I wouldn't be surprised if either Spain or Germany, or both of them, had trouble scoring. I wouldn't be surprised by a draw there to keep things very, very interesting until the final match day. This is going to be really Spain and Germany's group to lose. I don't really trust either side right now. And in Group F, Belgium, serious underperformers. In all years we've seen them. Yes, they come here number 1, number 2, but they never do anything of value. They got Canada, Morocco, and Croatia. Really dangerous sides. Canada, I think they're the weakest team in the group. Morocco are stacked. Only the midfield is a little weak. They have a backline consisted of players who play in top teams. They have Hakimi, they have Mazraoui, they have Aguerd who plays in the EPL. They have Hakimi Ziyech up front and Syria up front. Really strange group of death in my opinion. Group G with Brazil, Serbia, Switzerland, and Cameroon. Wow, this is gonna be insane. And keep in mind that it was almost the same group in the previous World Cup with Brazil, Serbia, and Switzerland, I believe. And Group H, of course, with Uruguay, Korea, and Ghana. Ghana are going to cause some problems. They have a lot of players. They brought Iñaki Williams from Bilbao. They brought Tarek Lamptey from Brighton. They got all kinds of players who have a lot of quality and a lot of experience playing in Europe's top-tier leagues. So the 4 bottom groups, Group E, F, G, and H, are the groups of death. I just see them as that way. I don't think. I think we'll see a lot of upsets in those groups.
Yeah, Pavlos, you mentioned the group that has Japan in it, and as you guys will see at the end of the show, I do have a futures bet on Germany and their first game against Japan. Their first game is against Japan on match day 1. It's literally one that worries me in that game, only because even going back to 2018, Japan were on the cusp of going into the quarterfinals. They led Belgium in the round of 16, 2-0 in the 52nd minute. And then Belgium scores in the 69th, 74th, and then the 94th and final minute of that game, as there were 4 minutes of added extra time to win that game 3-2. So yeah, this Japan team comes out and competes each and every time. So I'm very leery of that group, but hopefully this Germany team can get through. Guys, I want to get into a discussion, if you guys are good with this, and just talking about teams, federations, and how difficult it is. Like, you look at Europe, and when the World Cup has been in Europe, only one non-European team has ever won the World Cup in Europe, and that was in 1958 when Brazil went to Sweden and won the World Cup. That was Pele was 17 years old in that game, Pavlo. So I'm going to go to you first on this one. 17 years old, Pele, scored 2 goals in the finals. And then you look at European teams when the World Cup is outside of Europe, and they just seem to struggle. The only 2 teams that have ever won a World Cup outside of Europe is Spain when they won it in South Africa. God, those damn vuvuzelas, man. My ears are still ringing from those vuvuzelas. Iniesta scoring in the 116th minute to win it in extra time, 1-0 against the Netherlands. And then, of course, Germany in 2014 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, beating Argentina on Mario Götze's goal in the 113th minute to win that one 1-0. Pavlos, do you factor in the fact that European teams struggle to win out of Europe in World Cups in looking at this one that is obviously in Qatar?
Yeah, it's a really weird selection to pick Qatar. I don't want to get into that, but I'm not really sure how teams will perform. So I don't really take it into consideration. So the short answer is no. But people are gonna play now in situations where they haven't really trained for. I'm not sure how the weather is gonna be there, but I'm guessing it's gonna be hotter than where everybody is coming from. So yes, the stadiums will have air conditioning or whatever, but I think it's going to be weird to pick to take that into consideration, because if we follow that line of thought, maybe we should pick an Asian team, which I don't really think that we're going to see such an upset. But I don't really think it's going to be a factor to to destroy the chances from teams outside of Asia. So personally, I don't really take that into a lot of consideration, but we should be careful because, again, the temperature and the humidity are really weird in that part of the world, and I'm not sure how it will affect players who are used to just different circumstances.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and I covered that with Kelly Stewart in our video. I talked about not only the June and July weather in Qatar and why the World Cup is not being played in the summer. Players would be dropping, even with the so-called air conditioning that these advanced stadiums are supposed to have. The weather is 41 Celsius, which is like I think 113, 115, somewhere around there, Fahrenheit in the summer, and even in the winter. The winters in Qatar, or the temperature in November, is still pretty high, 29.5 Celsius for you Canadian people, and for your Americans, 85.1 is the Fahrenheit weather in November, and then you have to think about field temperature, and these players running miles for 90 minutes on that field in that heat. So, Kev, I'll go to you next on this one. Your thoughts on European teams struggling outside of Europe and this tournament?
Like Pavlos said, I don't think it's a factor because, I mean, the two of the last three World Cups, as you mentioned, that streak's been broken. So, yeah, I don't see it as much of a factor either. Although, again, I'll agree with Pavlos on the fact this is a very strange World Cup. I would arguably say it won't suit European teams all that much with the winter schedule here. I mean, they're already starting to get tired with Champions League and Premier League. A lot of countries, like South Korea, they employ summer leagues, so it's going to suit them that little bit more. But, yeah, overall on the main question, no, I don't think it's a major concern.
Nick, I'm going to throw the same question at you on this one. And Kevin makes a good point. Spain and Germany have traveled outside. Prior to 2010, we hadn't seen one European team win a tournament outside of Europe. When you're looking at your futures, does that come into your betting of futures at all?
Not this particular World Cup, just because it is in Asia. If this happened to be in Europe, or South America, I might entertain that question, thinking the opposite continent might struggle on that soil, but not in this situation. A South American team or a European team that win this thing, and honestly, I'll go as far as saying it's probably going to be a European team. For the last four winners are European. Only one South American team has even made the final in the last four World Cups, and that was Argentina. You mentioned that against Germany, Carm. European teams, I mean, when it comes down to it, Brazil and Argentina are the two favorites, but I think that's just wrong. They are obviously the head and shoulders above any other South American team, but the European teams are just tested way more. There's just so much more competition. When you get to the elite level, there's only, a handful of teams in the world that qualify in that elite level, and Europe's got more of them, and those teams will see each other more often and face each other more often and play each other more often, and that test, as it happens throughout, the years, I think, helps in these type of situations. And all of a sudden, Brazil's used to dominating every single team in South America. And when they don't, and all of a sudden their ability to just possess the ball goes away, it changes things. And I think the teams in Europe are just more equipped. So I think it's going to be a European team. I don't think the location matters at all as far as being in Asia this year.
That's what I like to hear from you, Nick. You're a smart man, my friend. That's what I like to hear from you. Let's say get a European team out there, but as these countries are releasing their lineups, their squads. I'm looking at these, and I looked at the Argentina one. I'm like, my God, look at these players. You look at the Brazil, and you're like, I can field Brazil A and Brazil B, and likely make it out of the group stages with the B team as well as the A team. These are some stacked teams for sure, but it's going to be a very World Cup in that sense. Guys, before I go to the panel here, and they're going to let you know what they have up at Wager Talk and Sports Memo, along with their dark horses and their future bets, favorites. I just want to mention, if you're trying to map out your own future bets, there are some sites. It's more or less figuring out who's going to face who in the group in the knockout stages. You can go to a site like there's a UK site called I think it's their newspaper site, telegraph.co.uk, and they have a World Cup predictor. You can pick the positions of each group, and then you just hit the next button. It populates it into the round of 16, and you keep picking your teams right through to the finals. It's like picking it's like picking your March Madness bracket. You can get that done, and you get to see who you think is going to play who, and figure out who has the easier, who's got the easier run to the semifinals and finals, and that can help you with your future bet. So it's not a bad way to go as far as that goes. Guys, Pavlos, I'm going to go to you first here. Give us your World Cup favorites. Give us two and a couple dark horses, and tell us what you have up at Sports Memo for the World Cup.
Yeah, I have the World Cup package. You can get it now for a discount. Some props are already loaded, a few futures as well, a side bet for the first couple of days. And of course, as we get more information, we will be loading more plays. Now, my World Cup favorites are Argentina at plus 650. I think Lionel Messi really wants this tournament. It's probably one of his last major tournaments. I think they're going to have a deep run, so I like Argentina plus 650. My second favorite is Netherlands at plus 1400. I just love the way they play. I love the coach who came out of retirement simply just to win a World Cup, the first World Cup for the Netherlands actually. And as my dark horses, I like Uruguay at plus 4,000. This is the last major tournament for many of these players. They have a lot of quality, a lot of talent up front. Yes, of course, they're 35 years old each, but I think they're going to make a deep run. And my other dark horse, if they are a dark horse, are Portugal at plus 1,400. Despite what we hear, the rumblings about Ronaldo not getting along with his teammates, I think he has a lot of proof. I think Coach Fernando Santos is one of the top coaches in the world. I think he's gonna dictate a lot of calmness in the locker room, and I think they're gonna have a deep run. So Uruguay plus 4,000 and Portugal at plus 1,400 for me.
All right, Pavlos, I do like those plays. And to your point of whether Portugal is a dark horse at 14-1 or not, I consider 10-1 or lower the favorites. I consider anything from 12-1 or higher as dark horses. And when I'm looking to play future bets, that's where I'm sort of aiming at. You've got to get at least 12-1 or higher. If you've seen some of my future bets that cash, it's to give yourself an opportunity to hedge out later on. Kev, I'm going to go to you next. Give me a couple of favorites, couple of dark horses, my friend, and let us know what you have up at Wager Talk.
Just to answer next question as well, I'm at an undisclosed location due to Forest Green hunting me down, so I've had no choice but to go to a hotel. But we have 5 prop plays loaded up at Wager Talk right now for the World Cup, so head on over there for them. And yeah, in terms of World Cup favourites, look, Champions course scares me, obviously, with France. But their route to the semi-final looks potentially fairly easy. Denmark obviously present a problem in the group stage for them. But, they get past that. They're potentially looking at Mexico or Poland in the round of 16. I've already said in the quarterfinals, I don't believe England go that far. So you could have a scenario where France get to the quarterfinals and face someone like USA or Ecuador. And then you've got a plus 650 ticket in the semi-finals with a team like France. So, yeah, I like France as one of the World Cup favourites here. And look, from a second World Cup favourite, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here. Sometimes you just have to suck it up and go with the favourite. Reuters did a recent poll with over 100 soccer market traders ahead of this World Cup. Over half of the entire money in those accounts have Brazil to win this World Cup. So while Argentina's attracting the public money and all that, the sharp money is all on Brazil, over 50% of that. And, as Carmine said earlier on, when you're looking at their team, A and B. It's just ridiculously strong. So I actually think if we just had to pick a side in this one, I know Nick doesn't like them. He expects a European team, but I think Brazil will win. You know, they do win this World Cup, although the odds aren't great. So in terms of dark horses, I'm going to agree with Pavlos. I like Portugal. Again, just looking at their route, I think Uruguay over the hill. I think they're a little too strong for teams like Korea, although, you know, I don't want to let my wife hear me say that. So I do expect them to go through. And, you know, again, Serbia at 80-1. You can also get 100-1 at some books as well. That looked just way too big. Again, because you're looking. So I want to sit there because there's a route where Serbia potentially face Portugal in the round of 16. I want to have one of Pavlos' shorts on that says I don't care who wins, because I'm going to have an 80-1 ticket and a 14-1 ticket on either side and have that going into the quarterfinal. So, yeah, those are my 4 teams.
I love it. Nick, I'm and Kev, I agree with that Serbia one. That's just a huge price. And while we're not saying that they are going to win the World Cup, at 80-1, if you think they're going to get out of their group, you now have an 80-1 ticket amongst 16 teams remaining, and that price will be substantially lower. And if they can somehow get out of that first round and into the quarterfinals, you have a really nice hedgeable ticket. Nick, give me your thoughts on a couple of favorites, a couple of dark horses, and what you have up at WagerTalk.
Well, package that's up right now is similar, the same as you guys, $149 for the World Cup package, or the buy one get one free month of soccer. So that would be 60 days for $199. Definitely a good deal. Settled futures already loaded up, including a 5% future. And of course, we'll have game matches coming up in the next couple of days as we get a little closer. So I'm looking at, I agree with Netherlands as one of the favorite plays. I mean, I just look at their path. They have probably the most straightforward group. When you have Qatar in a one, right, in their group, just because they're the host, Netherlands is a pot B or pot 2, whatever team. They're clearly the favorites in that group. So no issue there coming out. They should win that. Then they're either going to go to face Wales or USA. We know what they've done against Wales. They've proven that twice here recently in the Nations League group, and USA just won't be a problem. So then it's going to be quarterfinals against either Argentina or Denmark or France, depending who finishes second in that group. So that's where it'll get tough, but it's a good path to at least that quarterfinal for Netherlands. Spain, I mean, we mentioned Brazil. Spain have a very, very deep roster as well, and the players they had to leave off this World Cup team are just as strong, and you can make a team that could probably get out of the group stage from there as well. They proved themselves at the Euros last year. They made it all the way to the finals, lost on penalties to Italy, so they've now proven themselves more so. Of course, that between them and Germany, it's going to be really a coin flip of who's going to win the group. I would argue it might be better to get second. I think Croatia or Canada, if they win, is who they play. Might give them more trouble than playing Belgium, as Pavlos mentioned, who I just cannot show up in these big tournaments. But either way, getting out of the group is no problem for Spain. For my dark horses, Denmark, they had a great run last year at the Euros. I played them as a dark horse in that Euro tournament. They made it to the semifinals. They lost to England in extra time. So, one bounce of the ball, they might be in the final there as well. And I think their path is very solid here. It's them and France, of course, who they're going to battle with. But, assuming they get out of that group, if they finish second to France, they're going to face off with Argentina. So hopefully if they can win, they're going to either have Mexico or Poland. And then Serbia. You guys mentioned Serbia already, so I don't need to hit too much on there. But they've proven themselves in qualifying. They beat Portugal already there. They can get out of that group without much problem. Their offense is ridiculous. It might be one of the scariest trios of scoring threats up front. And defense and midfield are both very solid as well. So I think they have just 81 tickets, just too good to pass up on a team that I know and has proven they can win games. So those are my future picks on the World Cup.
All right, awesome, and we'll finish it off with, even though I have already done mine in a video, let's throw them up there for myself. And I'm looking at, obviously, a couple favorites, a couple dark horses. You can't get away for myself from Brazil with the roster that they have. And they just steamrolled teams in qualifying for the World Cup. This German team, a bit of a surprise because this is a team who I like to actually win the World Cup at 10-1, and I'm holding a ticket on them from Vegas. listen, I'm all about managerial changes that work. The World Cup in 2018 was an absolutely brutal one. The last World Cup for obviously Joachim Low, that team just did not look right in that tournament, but they still have a winning culture there. I like what Hansi Flick has done with this team. He's got them playing a different style of football. So I'm looking for them to make a deep run in this tournament. And as far as I'm going right back to Croatia. I had Croatia 40-1 in the 2018 World Cup. They made the finals. I'm coming back with them because I think they will get out of their group and could very well win that group. And of course, Serbia. I believe Serbia will get out of their group. They'll finish second in that group. And if Portugal win their group, it'll set up a round of 16 meeting with Portugal. And those two teams were in the World Cup, the same group in qualifying. Serbia, a 2-2 draw at home. And then on the final match day, went to Portugal, needing to win that game to win the group and beat Portugal 2-1 in Portugal to win that group and send Portugal into the World Cup playoffs to get their way in. So those are my 4 up on the screen. Guys, head over to WagerTalk.com and Sports Memo. You can pick up the World Cup $149 early bird package for any of the guys on this show. We appreciate you tuning in. We hope you have a fantastic World Cup, and we're going to be back next Tuesday to do a recap of the first couple of opening games and then preview some of the games for the following 3 or 4 days of the World Cup. Have a great time, guys. Thanks for tuning in. For myself, Nick Borrman, Kevin Dolan, and Pavlos Laguretos, this is Stoppage Time World Cup. Good luck with your plays.
Tuesdays is known as $2 Tuesdays at WagerTalk.com and SportsMemo.com, where you can get the hottest handicappers' best bet or daily package for only $2.